sorry. I don't have more time.
Thank you very much. Senator Krueger.
Good morning.
Good morning, Senator.
You have a tough job. I'm not sure I'd want your job. So when I look at the budget, is your budget going up or down? Because from your testimony, you list out all this new money you're going to use, but I think you're actually taking a significant reduction in your budget. Could you confirm for me that your budget is approximately $187 million less than it was in 2012-13?
I haven't done that math, Senator, but what I can tell you is that the budget is flat. Discounting the new capital money, the New York Works money, particularly there's $40 million in New York Works funds. But on the state operating side, remember that 74 employees were transferred to information services, new department. So that money gets backed out. Last year, there was also some lump sums for collective bargaining agreements that came into place. So those were basically one-time payments, but all of those, the increases that was part of those that is recurring is in our base budget. So I think when you net it all out, it may look like there's a reduction, but only because we've lost 74 employees to information services. And then there was some one-time expenditures last year that didn't carry forward because of the collective bargaining agreements that were settled. So, and I'm happy to, run through the numbers on
Okay,
this.
so I will follow up with you later.
Yeah.
But you are decreasing or zeroing out the invasive species pest management program, and is that not correct?
No,
No?
no.
Okay, so the ads for the Cornell Integrated Pest Management and Invasive Species has not been removed from the budget?
No.
No, okay.
You're drawing blanks because
Okay,
that program
good,
is
just
carried
that
forward.
I'm getting
Yeah.
wrong information. Apparently, the federal government has pointed out we don't have adequate staffing for our shellfish inspection program. Can you tell me about that situation?
I don't think they've said, I think they've raised concerns about the level of staffing. They haven't said that it's inadequate. I think they said, you're right on the line.
In your testimony, you list out one of the items you're going to spend your $40 million from the New York Works Fund to address legacy, orphaned, and abandoned oil and gas wells. What does that mean, and how much are we spending?
The total is $2 million in the budget? The total in the New York Works program is $2 million. This is for old oil and gas wells that were never properly plugged from before when DEC started regulating oil and gas drilling in New York. So we have hundreds, if not thousands, of old legacy wells that haven't been properly plugged. We have a $100 permit fee that is charged to drillers when they come into New York now that goes into a fund that is supposed to be used to cap and close those old wells. We've made very little progress. That money has been swept historically out of DEC's budget. So this is in recognition that we need to address those old legacy wells and close them properly. So how many we'll get to with this is an open question because some may cost $5,000 to close, others may cost $50,000 to close. But we needed a significant sum of money, and $2 million does this, because when we put these RFPs out to close these old wells, unless the type of business person that actually comes and closes these wells can work on a whole slew of them at once, it wasn't worth their while pulling in all the equipment they needed to do a small job. So we'd put RFPs out, and with the little money we've had in the past to do this, we didn't actually get any bids. So with $2 million, we think we will attract a number of responsive bidders to the RFP, and we'll actually get to close some of these wells.
And if the state were to go forward with hydrofracking, resulting in a large number of wells being drilled, and the research shows that the rate of failure on those wells within a 5-10 year period is pretty high, who would have responsibility for dealing with those wells. Would your agency be responsible for taking care of them under a system like this?
The driller would be responsible for those wells.
Sorry. So, under state law, those drillers would be responsible?
We think they would, yes.
Okay, if you could get me the statute that you're referencing to ensure that that's the case, because apparently that's not the case for the existing legacy wells.
The existing legacy wells were wells that were drilled before DEC had a regulatory program in place. And drilling has been going on in New York since the late 1800s.
Okay, so you're going to get back to me that there's actually state law and/or regulation that it is not the
We
state's
could require things
responsibility.
like liability insurance. We can require things through the permitting process that would address any problems at the well.
We don't have a permitting process yet, so
And we-
I guess my question is, do we have state law that requires that it would be the obligation of the drillers to?
Yes, the state law does require wells to be plugged.
And would it
and-
there be their
and closed.
responsibility to do environmental cleanup caused by problems with their wells under existing law or statute or regulation?
We could compel them to clean
We
up.
could, but
We
it's not,
We would compel them to
we
clean
would,
up,
but it's not
yes.
existing law yet. I'm sorry, she's shaking her head one way, he's shaking his head the other way.
My executive deputy just confirmed that plugging wells is a requirement under existing law.
I'm sorry, could you say that a little louder? I'm sorry.
Plugging an existing well is required. A closure of a well is required under existing law.
And mediation of environmental damage from a well is covered under existing law?
Go ahead, Mark. You jump in.
Thank you very much. Yes, the plugging requirements in the existing law also have a financial security component, a bonding component, so each well is required to have adequate resources to require the operator to plug, and if the operator doesn't plug, the DEC gets to do that. In terms of any other violations of the Environmental Conservation Law, including Clean Water Act or Clean Air Act, the department has the authority to enforce those provisions.
Quiet, everyone, I'm trying to listen, sorry.
And so the department has broad authority to enforce each of those laws as it relates to oil and gas activities, whether it's high volume or the traditional historic approach.
When Dr. Shaw was here last week, he was referencing that there's an intention to have some kind of public health surveillance system in place that is some kind of, well, I want to be careful because he said it would be more the responsibility of DEC, but I'm not sure he said it would be totally DEC. Can you tell me what kind of public health surveillance system you have planned if we go forward with hydrofracturing and what we're surveilling?
It really is the Department of Health's surveillance system. They have an existing surveillance system that monitors hospital data, emergency room data, and it's, what I've learned recently is it's very extensive. So they would apply that surveillance program if fracking were to go forward in a specific area, then they would just use the existing system, but focus it on that area to establish whatever the baseline is prior to HVAC activity, and then see if there's any change in that data as if HVAC went forward. So it is a Department of Health surveillance program, and that is not my area of expertise, but Dr.
But
Shaw's.
what is your area of expertise would be environmental problems growing. So I'm very concerned in my 37 seconds left. What's, for example, your model, your surveillance model for ensuring there are not alarmingly high methane emissions? Because there was a recent study done by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration talking about alarmingly high methane emissions from natural gas extraction. Do you have a system in place for measuring that and the staff to do so?
We would have, we proposed a very extensive monitoring program for emissions generally around a well site, so that we can monitor existing conditions and conditions while a job is in progress
Where have you proposed that?
in our SGIS.
And have you estimated the cost for that and how much staffing is required for that?
We have,
And is there any funding for any of those functions in the proposed state budget this year?
there is not.
So we can assume that either nothing will be going forward or you won't be prepared to do that function in the coming 12 months?
As I've said over and over again, we are not going to permit anything we don't have funds to properly monitor and enforce.
My time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.